precious life-giving waters of Earth, so long taken for granted, now drip with the blood of embattled civilizations. When astrophysicist Eugene Howard discovered the reality-bending quantum properties hidden in Earth's oceans, rivers, and streams, he had no idea his breakthrough would turn his homeworld into the front line of a desperate galactic war. Coveting Earth's most valuable resource, an alien race called the Rakari arrived first, seeking trade but quickly resorting to force. Eugene could only watch helplessly as his son Cade was taken in the chaos, the first human casualty in a conflict that threatened everything. But the Rakari's rash act would prove fateful. Aboard their vessel, the startled aliens discovered young Cade's innate hydromancy, an ability to manipulate water tied to Earth's unique quantum signature, a potential weapon to turn the tide of war. Despite protests, the Rakari set course for their imperiled homeworld, intent on harnessing the child's power. Eugene, left behind, works feverishly in secret to build a quantum beacon powered by Earth's water, a device to trace his son across the stars. Success means a miraculous reunion. Failure means a father's eternal anguish, and a beacon signaling to desperate civilizations that the war's ultimate weapon originates on Earth. As more races learn of Earth, Eugene knows time runs short. The beacon is humanity's last gambit in a game of galactic scales. When activated, it will either save a child and change the destiny of a world, or call forth the wolves of war to the defenseless cradle of mankind. Zafira's laboratory hummed with the gentle gurgle of water as she watched Cade levitate a shimmering orb between his small hands. The liquid sphere rippled and danced, catching the lights in a mesmerizing display. The young human's face was a mask of concentration, his brow furrowed as he manipulated the water with a thought. Incredible, Zafira breathed, her large, luminous eyes widening with each passing second. The level of control, the precision, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Cade released the water, letting it splash back into the containment unit. He turned to Zafira, a grin spreading across his face. "Did you see that? I made it change shape this time." Zafira nodded, her own smile mirroring the boy's enthusiasm. "Your progress is remarkable, Cade. With each passing day, your connection to the water grows stronger." But even as she marveled at Cade's abilities, Zafira couldn't shake the growing sense of unease that gnawed at her thoughts. The prejudice and suspicion the boy faced from her people were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Just yesterday, a group of Rakari children had taunted Cade, calling him a primitive and a savage. It had taken all of Zafira's diplomatic skills to defuse the situation. She knew she couldn't protect him forever. Sooner or later, someone would discover their secret experiments with Earth water. And when that happened, Zafira pushed the thought from her mind, focusing instead on the task at hand. She gestured to the containment unit, where a small vial of clear liquid sat waiting. "I have a new challenge for you today, Cade," she said, keeping her tone light. "This water is from a spring near my childhood home. It's said to have special properties. Let's see if you can sense them." As Cade reached for the vial, his face a mask of grit, Zafira couldn't help but wonder what the future held for this remarkable child, and for the future of the cosmos itself. On Earth, Eugene sat in a dimly lit room, his face illuminated by the glow of a computer screen. The schematics for the quantum beacon rotated slowly on the display, a dizzying array of equations and diagrams that made little sense to anyone but him. "Impressive work, Dr. Howard." General Volkov's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "With these modifications, the beacon's range will be increased tenfold." Eugene nodded, his eyes never leaving the screen. "And you're certain your people can provide the materials I need?" Volkov chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Dr. Howard, you're speaking to a man with access to the most advanced military technology on the planet. I assure you, whatever you need, I can provide." Eugene finally tore his gaze away from the computer, fixing Volkov with a hard stare. "And in return, you want control over any alien technology we acquire. A small price to pay for the chance to bring your son home, wouldn't you agree?" Volkov leaned forward, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Think of it, Dr. Howard. With the right bargaining chip, we could ensure Earth's safety for generations to come." Eugene said nothing, his mind racing with the implications of Volkov's words. He knew he was making a deal with the devil, But what choice did he have? Cade was out there somewhere, alone and scared, and Eugene would do whatever it took to bring him back, even if it meant unleashing the wolves of war on an unsuspecting galaxy. The Rakari High Council chamber buzzed with tension as Admiral Katarians smacked his palm on the polished table. "Enough of this scientific curiosity," he bellowed, his eyes fixed on Zafira. "The boy's abilities are a weapon, and we will use them as such." Zafira stood her ground, her slim frame dwarfed by the imposing military leader. "Cade is a child, not a tool for your war machine. His powers could revolutionize our understanding of the universe." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces a mix of concern and calculation. After a moment of hushed deliberation, the head counselor spoke. "We appreciate your work, Zafira, but the Admiral is correct. The boy will be transferred to a military facility for training." Zafira's heart sank as she watched Cade being led away by stone-faced guards. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, his small hand reaching out to her as the doors closed behind him. On Earth, Eugene stood in the heart of a bustling military complex, surrounded by a forest of blinking lights and humming machinery. The quantum beacon towered before him, a testament to human ingenuity and a father's desperate love. General Volkov approached, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "It's time, Dr. Howard. Are you ready to make history?" Eugene nodded, his finger hovering over the activation switch. With a deep breath, he pressed down, sending a pulse of energy surging through the beacon. The air crackled with possibility as the signal raced across the cosmos. In a distant part of space, Zafira's stolen ship shuddered as the quantum pulse washed over it. Alarms blared as systems failed, plunging the vessel into darkness. Cade stumbled, water from his practice orb splashing across the floor. "What's happening?" he cried, reaching for Zafira in the gloom. She steadied him, her mind racing. "The beacon? Your father must have activated it, but something's wrong. We're losing power." As Zafira fought to regain control of the failing ship, Earth became a beacon of hope and danger to the watching galaxy. The Rakari fleet, already en route, accelerated their approach. Not far behind, the sleek vessels of the Zelvari cut through space, drawn by the promise of Earth's power. In his secure bunker, Volkov watched the quantum beacon's readouts with growing excitement. He turned to his aide, a predatory smile on his face. "Prepare the message. It's time to make our offer to the Rakari." But before Volkov could act, alarms erupted throughout the facility. Eugene burst into the room, his face a mask of fury. "What have you done, Volkov? This was never about helping me find Cade, was it?" As chaos engulfed the Earth facility and alien armadas raced toward the blue planet, Cade and Zafira drifted in the vastness of space. The young boy placed his hand against the cold viewport, staring at the distant stars. "We'll find a way home," Zafira assured him, even as doubt gnawed at her. "And when we do, we'll show everyone that your gift isn't meant for war. It's meant for something greater." Cade nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight. He raised his hands, summoning a small sphere of water. As it floated between his palms, he realized that the fate of worlds might rest in this simple element, and in his power to control it. The distant stars blurred into streaks of light as Zafira's stolen ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared, their urgent wails mixing with the hiss of escaping atmosphere. Cade stumbled, bracing himself against a bulkhead as the floor lurched beneath him. "Life support's failing," Zafira called out, her fingers dancing across flickering control panels. "We're losing power to all systems." Cade's eyes widened in fear. "What do we do?" Zafira's mind raced, weighing their dwindling options. Her gaze fell upon the ship's water reserves, and a desperate plan crystallized. "Cade, listen carefully. We need to use your hydromancy to create a quantum warp bubble." "A what?" Cade asked, confusion etched on his young face. "It's theoretical, but it might be our only chance," Zafira explained, guiding Cade to the water storage tanks. "Focus your ability on the water. Imagine shaping it into a sphere around the entire ship." Cade nodded, his brow furrowing in concentration. He raised his hands and the ship's remaining water began to respond, flowing out of the tanks and coalescing into a shimmering barrier. As Cade poured more of his will into the liquid, it began to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The ship's alarms reached a fever pitch as the last of the life support systems failed. Zafira felt her lungs burning, gasping for air that was no longer there. Just as unconsciousness threatened to claim her, Cade's quantum bubble snapped into place. Reality warped around them. The stars outside stretched into impossible shapes as the bubble propelled them faster than light. Cade and Zafira found themselves hurled into the vast, unknown regions between galaxies. Back on Earth, chaos reigned. The skies above major cities worldwide filled with the ominous shapes of descending alien ships. General Volkov's troops clashed with Eugene's loyalists, neither side able to mount an effective response to the extraterrestrial incursion. In a remote Siberian forest, a Rakari scout team emerged from their landing craft. Captain Zekathar raised a sensor device, its readings confirming what his eyes already told him. Water was everywhere on this planet. "By the cosmic tides," he breathed, "it's more than we ever dreamed." A distant explosion drew his attention. Through the trees, he glimpsed the sleek hull of a Zelvery vessel. Their sworn enemies had arrived as well. Meanwhile, in the heart of a military complex, Eugene Howard fought desperately to reach the quantum beacon. Alarms blared as Volkov's forces pushed deeper into the facility. Eugene ducked behind a console as bullets whizzed overhead, his mind racing to find a solution. "We can't let Volkov get control of the beacon," he shouted to his team. "If he contacts those aliens, it's game over for Earth." A deafening explosion rocked the complex. Through the smoke and debris, Eugene saw Volkov's troops pouring into the beacon chamber. Time was running out. In orbit, the first salvos of an interstellar war lit up the sky. Rakari and Zelvari ships exchanged superheated plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes. On the ground, terrified humans watched as stray shots carved smoldering craters into city blocks. Aboard the Zelvari command ship, Science Officer Nyleth studied the readouts from their human test subjects. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Their biology shows latent potential for hydromancy. With the right training—" Her musings were cut short as the ship rocked from a Rakari attack. The battle for Earth's water was only beginning. In the quantum beacon chamber, Eugene made a final, desperate lunge for the controls. If he could just activate the signal, there was a chance, however slim, that Cade might sense it across the cosmic void. It was a long shot, but it might be Earth's only hope for salvation. As Eugene's hand closed around the activation switch, Volkov's voice rang out, "Stop right there, Howard!" Eugene froze, caught between the barrel of Volkov's gun and the beacon's control panel. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance of his next move. Eugene's finger hovered over the activation switch, his heart pounding. Volkov's gun remained trained on him, the general's eyes cold and calculating. "Think about what you're doing, Howard," Volkov growled. "We can control this situation, use it to Earth's advantage." A deafening explosion rocked the facility. Through the smoke and debris, figures emerged, civilians wielding makeshift weapons and... was that water? "Now, Eugene," a familiar voice shouted. Eugene's eyes widened as he recognized Luca, his former student. Without hesitation, he slammed his palm down on the switch. The quantum beacon hummed to life, its energy building to a crescendo. Volkov fired, but a wall of water materialized, deflecting the bullet. Luca stood at the forefront of a ragtag militia, his hands outstretched as he manipulated the liquid shield. "Impossible," Volkov breathed, staring at the display of hydromancy. Luca grinned. "You're not the only one who's been busy, General." The militia surged forward, unleashing torrents of water that sent Volkov's troops sprawling. Eugene worked feverishly at the controls, pushing the beacon to its limits. "If this works," he muttered, "it might just save us all." Millions of light years away, Zafira jolted awake as the ship's systems flickered back to life. She found Cade slumped against the viewport, the quantum bubble he'd created slowly dissipating. "Cade," she said gently, shaking his shoulder. "Wake up, we made it." The boy's eyes fluttered open. "Where are we?" Zafira checked the navigation systems, her breath catching. We're in the void between galaxies, over 10 million light years from home." Cade's face fell, But before he could respond, an alarm blared. Zafira's fingers flew over the console, her eyes widening. "It's the beacon," she exclaimed. "Your father's signal. It's stronger than ever." On Earth, chaos reigned. Rakari and Zelvari forces clashed in the streets of major cities, their advanced weaponry leaving swaths of destruction in their wake. Humanity fought back with whatever they could, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Until a scream of defiance cut through the din of battle. In the heart of New York City, a young woman named Maya stood alone against an advancing Zelvari battalion. Her eyes blazed with newfound power as she raised her hands. The fire hydrants lining the street exploded, their contents swirling into a massive, churning vortex. With a cry of effort, Maya brought the water crashing down on the alien forces. Tanks crumpled like tin cans, and foot soldiers were swept away in the deluge. The Rakari command ship in orbit picked up the surge of hydromantic energy. Admiral Tarians leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in excitement. "The Hydro-Chosen One," he breathed. "We've found them at last." As the order for a ceasefire spread through the Rakari ranks, Zafira guided their battered ship through the cosmic thread created by the quantum beacon. Cade sat beside her, his small hands resting on a sphere of water as he focused his power on maintaining their connection to the signal. "We're going home," Zafira said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "And when we get there, everything will have changed." The vastness of space stretched out before them, carrying the promise of an uncertain future and the weight of two worlds' destinies. The quantum beacon pulsed, its energy stretching across the cosmos. In an instant, Cade and Zafira's battered ship materialized in Earth's orbit, thrust into the heart of interstellar conflict. Alarms blared as weapons fire from all sides converged on their vessel. Cade's eyes widened, his hands instinctively rising. Water vapor coalesced around the ship, swirling into a protective vortex that deflected the incoming barrage. "Impossible," Zafira breathed, watching projectiles and energy beams dissipate against Cade's aqueous shield. On the bridge of the Rakari flagship Imperator, Admiral Katarians leaned forward, mandibles clicking rapidly. "That quantum signature? It's him, the Hydro-Chosen One." His claw slammed down on the comm panel. "All ships, cease fire immediately." As the barrage subsided, a transmission crackled through Zafira's ship. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Katarians of the Rakari fleet. You will board the Imperator at once." Zafira's grip tightened on the controls. "We don't have much choice," she murmured to Cade, "but stay close." Minutes later, they stood in the Imperator's cavernous audience chamber. Katarians towered over them, his compound eyes gleaming with awe-inspiring excitement. "Great One," he began, addressing Cade. "Your power could turn the tide of this war. Join us and we'll—" "No," Zafira interrupted, stepping forward. "We didn't come here to fight. There's been enough destruction already." Cade nodded, raising his hands. The moisture in the air responded, forming intricate patterns that danced between his palms. As he manipulated the water, a palpable calm settled over the chamber. Katarians watched, transfixed. Then his eyes narrowed. "Seize them!" Rakari guards surged forward. Zafira grabbed Cade's arm, backing away. "Now, Cade!" The boy's eyes flashed. Water erupted from every source in the room, engulfing them in a protective sphere. Before Katarians could react, they were gone, propelled through the ship's drainage systems and back to their vessel. On Earth, chaos reigned. Eugene Howard sprinted through the smoking ruins of the quantum beacon facility, Volkov's troops in hot pursuit. Beside him, Nevin, Luca's protege, manipulated streams of water to clear their path. "We have to reach the main console," Eugene shouted. "If we can broadcast the signal—" An explosion rocked the building. Eugene stumbled, his ears ringing. Through the haze, he saw Nevin frantically gesturing. A wall of water rose before them, barely deflecting a hail of gunfire. "Go!" Nevin yelled. "I'll hold them off." Eugene hesitated, then nodded grimly. He sprinted for the beacon chamber, praying he wasn't too late. High above, Zafira's ship plummeted through the atmosphere, following the beacon's signal. Cade pressed his hands against the viewport, eyes wide as he took in the war-torn landscape below. "There!" Zafira called out, pointing to a cluster of buildings surrounded by clashing forces. As they neared the ground, the sky ignited. Selvari ships in orbit unleashed a devastating bombardment. Hyper-accelerated water particles rained down, tearing through buildings and vaporizing anything in their path. Cade raised his arms, straining against the deadly deluge. A shield of swirling water formed around their ship, but hairline fractures appeared almost instantly. "I can't hold it," Cade gasped. Inside the facility, Eugene reached the beacon's controls. His fingers flew across the keys, modulating quantum frequencies. "Come on, come on!" The air crackled with energy. Outside, Cade felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced before. The quantum resonance amplified his abilities exponentially. With a cry of effort, Cade thrust his arms outward. An immense double helix vortex erupted from the ground, spiraling into the sky. The Selvari bombardment dissipated against its swirling surface. In orbit, Katarians and the Selvari commanders watched in awe as the vortex grew, visible even from space. Zafira's voice crackled across all frequencies. "This is what humanity is capable of. We have the power to reshape worlds or destroy them utterly. The choice is yours, peace or annihilation." A tense silence fell. Then one by one, the alien fleets powered down their weapons. On the ground, Eugene emerged from the facility to find Cade standing at the eye of the colossal water vortex. The boy's eyes glowed with ethereal power, the very oceans of Earth responding to his will. As the ceasefire took hold, all eyes turned to the young avatar of water. In his hands lay the power to usher in an era of unprecedented peace, or to unleash cataclysmic destruction upon the galaxy. The vortex dissipated, its swirling energies fading into wisps of mist. Cade lowered his arms, exhaustion etched across his young face. Eugene rushed forward, embracing his son as Zafira looked on, relief evident in her eyes. "It's over," Eugene breathed. "For now." In the days that followed, an uneasy calm settled over the war-torn landscape. The Rakari and Selvari, awed by the display of raw hydrokinetic power, retreated to their ships in orbit. Earth's leaders, shell-shocked but determined, convened in Eugene's hastily fortified compound to begin negotiations. Cade found himself at the center of it all, seated at a massive oak table surrounded by holographic projections of alien dignitaries. Zafira stood protectively at his side, her hand resting on his shoulder. "The boy's abilities are unprecedented," Admiral Katarian's voice crackled through the comm system. "With his mastery over Earth quantum water, he could reshape the very fabric of galactic politics." Murmurs of agreement and concern rippled through the assembled diplomats. Zafira leaned forward, her voice steady. "Cade's powers aren't a weapon to be wielded. They're a gift, one that could benefit all our species if we work together." She outlined a vision of Cade as a neutral arbiter, using his hydrokinetic abilities to ensure fair distribution of Earth's precious water resources. The plan seemed to gain traction, with even the most skeptical aliens nodding thoughtfully. But then a harsh, guttural voice cut through the discussions. "Preposterous!" Vizier Morak, a high-ranking Rakari noble, snarled. "We cannot entrust such power to a mere human child." The negotiations devolved into heated arguments. Cade shrunk back in his chair, overwhelmed by the cacophony of alien voices. Eugene placed a comforting hand on his son's arm, his lips pursed in drive. As the debates raged on, a chilling announcement silenced the chamber. Morak's face, twisted in malicious triumph, filled the central holoscreen. "Esteemed colleagues," he sneered, "before we proceed further, I believe you should see this." The screen flickered, replaced by grainy footage of a younger Eugene in a dimly lit laboratory. Cade watched in horror as his father worked alongside a man he recognized as General Volkov, their hands moving over complex equipment labeled with biohazard symbols. "As you can see," Morak's voice oozed satisfaction, "the boy's father was complicit in attempts to weaponize Earth's water against alien life. How can we trust the son of such a man?" Chaos erupted. Selvari delegates roared in outrage, while human representatives scrambled to contain the damage. Eugene's face had gone ashen, his eyes locked on Cade's betrayed expression. "Son, I can explain," he began, but his words were drowned out by the cacophony of accusations flying across the room. Outside the compound, the news spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered, their faces a mix of fear and anger. Some called for Cade's protection, while others demanded his powers be neutralized. In orbit, tensions between the alien fleets ratcheted up to dangerous levels. Weapons systems hummed to life, locked onto opposing ships in the fragile blue planet below. Amidst the growing pandemonium, a deafening roar shook the compound to its foundations. The holoscreens flickered, showing a massive explosion erupting from the Gulf of Mexico. A swirling vortex of impossible darkness began to spread across the ocean's surface, devouring water at an alarming rate. Quantum singularity bomb, Zafira breathed, her eyes wide with horror. They've weaponized a black hole. Cade stood, his small frame trembling, but his eyes blazing with purpose. He raised his hands, reaching out with his mind to connect with every water molecule on Earth. The strain was immediately apparent, sweat beading on his forehead as he grappled with the cosmic forces threatening to tear his world apart. "I can hold it," he gasped, his voice strained. "But I don't know. For how long?" As Cade fought his invisible battle, the compound descended into frenzied activity. Eugene barked orders, coordinating with what remained of Earth's military to maintain order. Zafira worked the communications channels, desperately trying to prevent full-scale war from breaking out in orbit. But even as they fought to keep civilization from crumbling, a new threat emerged. Admiral Katerian's loyalist fleet appeared in the skies above, weapons trained on the planet's surface. "Relinquish control of the boy," Katerian's voice boomed across all frequencies, "or we will crack open your world like an egg." Eugene and Zafira exchanged desperate glances. Their last hope lay with Nevin, the prodigy who had emerged as a leader among the newly awakened hydromancers. But could they reach him in time? As the ultimatum hung in the air, Earth's fate balanced on a knife's edge, with Cade's iron will the only thing holding back utter annihilation. As Earth teetered on the brink of annihilation, Zafira's voice crackled through the chaos. "Nevin, we need you now." Thousands of miles away, Nevin's eyes snapped open. He stood in a hidden underground cavern, surrounded by dozens of civilians with eyes glowing faintly blue. His secret hydromantic army. "It's time," he announced, voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "Remember your training. Trust in the water." The cavern emptied as his followers dispersed, each with a crucial role to play. Nevin himself sprinted towards a nearby lake, arms outstretched. The water responded, lifting him skyward on a pressurized column that propelled him towards Katerian's flagship. Aboard the alien vessel, Nevin's infiltrators were already at work. Pipes burst, coolant systems failed, and navigation arrays short-circuited as the hidden hydromancers exerted their will over every drop of liquid they could find. Alarms blared as Nevin landed on the ship's hull, water freezing instantly to form a protective cocoon around him. He carved his way inside, racing towards the bridge. "Listen to me," he shouted, amplifying his voice with swirling currents of mist. "Tarians leads you to ruin. How many more generations will suffer for this endless war?" Rakari soldiers hesitated, mandibles clicking uncertainly. Nevin pressed on, demonstrating his mastery over water with intricate displays that left the aliens awestruck. "Humanity stands ready to share our gifts," he continued. "Join us in forging a new path." A low rumble spread through the ranks. Weapons clattered to the floor as more and more Rakari turned against their commander. Meanwhile, Zafira raced to Cade's side. The boy lay motionless, every ounce of his being focused on containing the quantum singularity. Sweat beaded on his pale forehead. Zafira placed her hands on Cade's temples, closing her eyes. Their breathing synchronized, heartbeats aligning. A soft blue glow enveloped them both. In an instant, Zafira found herself standing on an endless plain of shimmering water. Cade's mental projection stood before her, straining against an impossibly dark vortex. "Together," Zafira said, extending her hand. Their fingers intertwined, and power surged between them. The vortex shuddered, then began to shrink. Reality snapped back into focus. Cade's eyes fluttered open. The immediate danger passed. "We did it," he whispered hoarsely. But their victory was short-lived. The doors to the council chamber burst open, revealing Morak flanked by snarling Zelvari commandos. "This ends now," the vizier roared, raising a crackling energy weapon. Zafira reacted instantly. Water coalesced into a shimmering barrier, barely deflecting the first volley of shots. Nevin dove for cover, dragging Cade with him. Eugene, caught in the open, wasn't so lucky. A stray bolt caught him in the chest and he crumpled to the ground. "Dad!" Cade screamed, struggling against Nevin's grip. The firefight intensified. Zafira's shields flickered under the assault, her face etched with strain. Nevin marshaled what strength he had left, conjuring lashing tendrils of water to harass their attackers. As the battle raged, Cade crawled to his father's side. Eugene's breathing was labored, blood seeping through his shirt. "I'm sorry," Eugene gasped, "for everything." Cade gripped his hand tightly. "Stay with me, Dad, please." The world seemed to narrow to this moment, father and son united in crisis. But all around them, the future of Earth hung in the balance, with hard choices and impossible decisions yet to come. The chaos of battle faded, replaced by the steady beep of medical equipment. Cade's eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the sterile white of the recovery room. Zafira sat nearby, her face a mixture of relief and concern. "How long?" Cade croaked, his throat dry. 3 weeks, Zafira replied, offering him a cup of water. "You've been in a coma since stabilizing the quantum rift." As Cade sipped, memories flooded back. The singularity bomb, his father's injury, the desperate stand against Morak. "Dad?" he asked, voice trembling. "Recovering," Zafira assured him. "There's much to catch you up on." Over the next few days, Cade's strength slowly returned. He learned of the newly formed Tripartite Council, tasked with overseeing Earth's quantum waters. Their first major challenge loomed large: fair allocation between humanity, the Rakari, and the Zelvari. In a secure conference room, Cade joined Nevin, Zafira, and the council members. Holographic displays flickered with complex hydrological data. Cade's mind raced, processing the information faster than he thought possible. "If we divert flow from here," he suggested, manipulating the 3D model, "we could increase output by 17% without compromising local ecosystems." Nevin nodded approvingly. "Impressive, but we'll need to account for seasonal variations in—" An alarm blared, cutting him off. A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "Council members, we have a situation. General Volkov's militia is mobilizing near the Rakari staging grounds." Zafira's expression hardened. "On screen." The holo display shifted, showing aerial footage of armed human insurgents setting up blockades along major waterways. Their leader, a grizzled man with cold eyes, addressed a cheering crowd. "They call it cooperation," Volkov's amplified voice boomed. "I call it surrender. We will not give one drop of our precious water to these alien invaders." Murmurs of concern rippled through the council. Cade felt a pit form in his stomach. He'd hoped for unity after the crisis, but clearly, deep divisions remained. "We need to act," Nevin said, turning to Cade. "The Rakari and Zelvari ships require water for basic life support. If we don't deliver soon—" Cade nodded, an idea forming. "What if we showed them? The aliens, I mean. Let them see firsthand how vast Earth's water truly is." The council deliberated briefly before approving the plan. Within hours, a heavily guarded expedition was underway. Cade found himself aboard a sleek submersible, flanked by wary diplomats and wide-eyed alien dignitaries. As they descended into the depths of the Pacific, Cade felt the familiar thrum of power. He reached out with his mind, connecting to the endless expanse of water around them. With a gesture, he created swirling vortexes of bioluminescent plankton, eliciting gasps of awe from the aliens. "This is but a fraction," Cade explained, his voice steady. "Earth's oceans contain over 1.3 billion cubic kilometers of water. There's more than enough for all our needs if we work together." The Rakari praetor chittered contemplatively. The Zelvari admiral's tentacles rippled in what might have been agreement. For a moment, it seemed progress was being made. Then chaos erupted. Alarms blared as the submersible rocked violently. Through the viewports, Cade saw other vessels under attack, sleek, deadly torpedoes streaking through the water. "Volkov!" Nevin growled, hands already moving to summon currents of water. Cade reached out with his abilities, sensing the positions of friend and foe alike. He focused, willing the water to bend to his command. Torpedoes veered off course, their guidance systems confused by suddenly shifting currents. Nevin's voice crackled over the comms. "Civilian hydromancers deployed. Evacuating diplomats now." Cade gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained his psychic grip on the surrounding waters. He could feel Volkov's forces, their hate and fear palpable even at this distance. With a surge of effort, Cade created a massive vortex, trapping the attacking vessels in a swirling prison of water. "I won't let you hurt anyone," Cade muttered, carefully calibrating the pressure to incapacitate, not kill. As the immediate danger passed, Cade slumped back in his seat, exhausted. The alien dignitaries stared at him with a mixture of fear and awe. "Perhaps," the Rakari praetor clicked, mandibles twitching, "we have underestimated the potential of this alliance." Back on the surface, the council reconvened. The failed attack had paradoxically strengthened their position, but deep divisions remained. Zephyra struggled to find common ground between the Rakari and Zelvari, their resource demands seemingly incompatible. It was Eugene, still pale but standing tall, who broke the deadlock. He strode into the chamber, carrying a modified version of his quantum beacon. "Members of the council," he began, his voice steady, "I propose a solution. This device, when properly calibrated, can serve as a hydriomatic distribution engine. It will allow any authorized hydromancer to direct freshwater shipments planet-wide based on allocations set by this body." As Eugene outlined the technical details, Cade felt a surge of pride. His father's invention could be the key to lasting peace. The council voted to implement Eugene's system, but even as preparations began, a new threat emerged. Reports filtered in of Vizier Morak's escape, last seen fleeing into the Amazon rainforest. Cade exchanged worried glances with Nevin and Zephyra. They all knew the danger Morak posed, especially if he found allies among Earth's remaining dissenters. "We need to find him," Cade said, his voice filled with quiet grit, "before he can undo everything we've accomplished." The hunt for Morak consumed their days. Cade pored over satellite imagery, searching for any sign of the rogue Vizier in the dense Amazon canopy. Nevin coordinated with local authorities, establishing a perimeter around the suspected area. Zephyra reached out to her network of hydromancers, hoping to sense any disturbances in the region's waterways. But Morak remained elusive, always one step ahead. As weeks stretched into months, a new threat emerged. Reports trickled in of strange activity deep within the rainforest. Locals spoke of eerie blue lights pulsing in the night, and whispers of a cult called the Krill began to circulate. Cade's comm unit chirped urgently. "We've got a problem," Nevin's voice crackled. "Multiple breaches detected in Eugene's distribution network." Heart racing, Cade sprinted to the command center. Holographic displays flickered with cascading error messages as technicians scrambled to contain the intrusion. "It's a coordinated attack," Zephyra announced, her fingers flying across a control panel. "They're overriding the safeguards, opening conduits all across the globe." A low rumble shook the building. Outside, dark clouds began to gather with unnatural speed. "Atmospheric vapor levels are spiking," a scientist reported, voice tight with fear. "We're seeing the formation of massive storm systems worldwide." Realization struck Cade like a physical blow. "It's Morak," he said. "He's using the Krill to trigger some kind of hydrological cascade." Nevin's face appeared on a nearby screen, rain lashing against him. "We're mobilizing hydromancer teams to combat the weather phenomena, but it's accelerating faster than we can contain." A deafening crack of thunder drowned out his next words. The command center's windows rattled as gale-force winds battered the building. "We need to shut down the distribution hub," Cade shouted over the growing chaos. "It's our only chance to—" His words were cut short as a torrent of water smashed through the reinforced glass. The room filled with screams as people were swept off their feet. Cade instinctively reached out with his abilities, creating a protective bubble around himself and those nearby. Through the deluge, he caught sight of a familiar figure striding calmly into the flooded chamber. Vizier Morak, flanked by robed figures with glowing blue markings, the Krill. "You're too late," Morak's voice carried easily over the howling wind. "The purification has begun." Cade's mind raced, searching for a solution as the waters continued to rise. He could feel the immense power building in the atmosphere, a self-sustaining cycle that threatened to consume everything. The fate of the entire planet hung in the balance, and time was running out.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.